Hi friends, it's Deanna here today, and today we are here to sew the Lucky Clover top and skirt. Super cute, tons and tons of different options on this pattern. You could do the crop top version, you can do the flounce version, you could do regular sleeve, you can do flounce sleeve, you can do split flounce sleeve. The skirt, there's a gather skirt, there's a more of a half circle skirt, there is a you could do it with tulle, you could do it with so many different fabrics. So it's really, really, really cool. There's so much in this pattern and it's just amazing. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. I am going to be making the flounce top with the flounce skirt, and I'm going to be making the gathered skirt with the tulle overlay. So I'm kind of doing a little bit of everything so we can kind of go over it. So before I get started though, let me remind you about our Fun Fan giveaway of $50 Ellie Mac gift certificate. And all you have to do is subscribe to our channel and comment below so you can be entered for our giveaway. So that's exciting. So go ahead and do that. Subscribe to our channel if you haven't, and so you don't miss out any other sewing tutorials for any of our patterns. And then comment below and you'll be entered and you could win $50, which would get you quite a few patterns so you can get started sewing with us. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. First thing we're gonna do is we're gonna grab our bodice and we're gonna put it right side up. We'll put our back right side up. You can do our back or front, but we're gonna meet those shoulder seams at the raw edge at the top. And these are little because I'm making the little size for my knees. So it's a little tiny little top. So we're meeting at the top and we're gonna sew those side seams now. Shoulder seams. We're gonna do that for the outer and we're going to do that for the liner. Now this option, this part has to be done with knit fabric because it's going to go over your head, over the child's head. So you need something knit because it's got to stretch over their head. You cannot use woven with this part because there is no zipper or anything like that for you to be open in the back and be able to put it on. So this part does need to be knit. I will be using my serger, but if you're using a sewing machine, just make sure you use a stretch stitch on your sewing machine. A zigzag stitch, lightning bolt stitch, any of those kind of stitches should do the trick. And I would just go ahead and check. Do a little check with your fabric to see which stitch works best with the fabric that you're using. But other than that, any kind of stretch stitch will do. So we're gonna go ahead and sew those shoulder seams together and move on. There we go. So now that those are sewn, we're gonna go ahead and grab our liner and outer and we're gonna put them right on top of each other. So we're gonna open them up and we're gonna put them right on top of each other, right sides together. Make sure your front is with your front and your back is with your back. Your front is a little bit lower than your back, so that's how you can tell which one's your front and which one's your back. We're gonna meet at the shoulder seams. Those two shoulder seams. And then we're gonna go all the way and meet all the way around the neck. Now you don't have to stretch or anything because you cut in the same size. So you're just matching up those raw edges around the neck. Around the neck. Double brush probably likes to stick together, so I have to kind of dab at it to open it up. All right, so now that our necks are kind of together, we're gonna go ahead and sew around that whole neck hole. You can do this with a stretch stitch on your sewing machine or the serger as well. I do it with the serger. Sometimes the serger gives you bulkier edges, so if you don't want a bulky edge, you can go ahead and do it with your stretch stitch on your sewing machine and then clip those edges so it's not so bulky. I'm gonna go all the way around. Again, I'm not stretching or anything. It should just fit evenly Make sure you don't catch any of your other parts of your top in there. That is the one scary thing about a serger. You don't want the knife to cut anything other than what you want it to cut. All right, so now we can flip it open. Make sure that you cut everything. I always say that, and then when I don't do it is when I mess up. So now I'm gonna open it and I'm gonna tuck one into the other through that neck hole. All right, and here is my top. I'm gonna steam around the neck. Okay, and now we're gonna decide which one is my front, my liner, and which one's my outer. So the reason why I say that is because, see that pretty little flower? That looks like a really pretty front, and the other side doesn't have anything, which also kind of looks pretty, but I think I want that pretty little flower to be my outer. And the reason why we're gonna do that is because now we're going to attach our sleeves, and it's not gonna be a reversible top. So now once I attach my sleeves to this side, this is gonna be my front side. So you just wanna make sure that you're attaching them to the right side. So this is my right side of my fabric, my outer. I'm gonna grab my little sleeve. I'm going to mark the top. So it's folded in half. I'm gonna go up here to the top of the sleeve and mark it. So I know exactly where that is. So I can pin that top right sides together with that shoulder seam. Right sides together where my shoulder is. And then I'm gonna go down the side, right sides together, meeting those raw edges all the way down. And then the other way. All the way down. Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing for the other sleeve, just because I love doing both sleeves at the same time, and then that way they're nice and finished at the same time, and we can move on to something else. So I'm going to finish pinning, and then after I'm done pinning, see how the raw edges are met together? It kind of goes on the curve, so you need to make sure that you're letting your fabric kind of go around, bring it over here, kind of let it follow. Don't pull it and be mean to it, just kind of tell it what to do gently. And we kind of go around the corner like that. And if you look at it, it's kind of rounded because it's your sleeve. But because it's knit, it kind of just fits nicely. Knit. Okay, so now we're gonna go ahead and sew that cap on this together. So we're gonna go ahead and sew all those 3 layers together. Make sure you're catching 3 layers, no more, no less. All right, make sure your sleeve is attached on correctly. Make sure no seams were left out. Then we're gonna go ahead and steam. After you attach that sleeve on, we're gonna fold our bodice right sides together. Right sides together. And we're gonna sew those side seams, and we're gonna do that on both sides. Side seam, meet at the armpit, go down the bodice and down the sleeve. So we're sewing that side seam together. All right, so there's my side seam, and I already sewed my other side seam together. Then we're gonna turn it right side out. Okay, now for our sleeve, if you want to leave it like a regular sleeve, you would go ahead and hem. If you want to do a split sleeve, you would go ahead and find your split. You're gonna cut straight out. Sorry, this is the, you're gonna do it at the back. You're gonna cut a line straight out. You're gonna measure a line straight out. You're gonna measure an inch 1.5. So we make the line, measure 1.5 away from the line, and then you will make a line straight up to make a triangle, okay? And then you're gonna cut that triangle out and hem your sides and all the way around if you're making that split seam. But I'm not, I'm just making a regular one. So I'm gonna fold it in half again. And as you can see, the back is a little bit longer than the front. So I'm gonna find my back and my front, because that is how they're going to be attached to my sleeve. So if you don't remember which one's the front and your back, you're gonna fold it back up. You're gonna put your pattern piece on. This is my front, this is my back. I'm gonna make a little notch where my front and my back are, my halves. One half, another half. That's how I'm gonna attach it. I'm gonna remember that this is my back. I'm gonna make a notch from the one edge. This is the seam right here, and this is the front right here. I'm gonna make a notch to remember that that's where my front is gonna go. I'm gonna grab my flounce, and my front, which is the shorter area, is going to go right side, touching that sleeve where I marked that front. So this is my front, not the seam, but the one directly across the seam. So I'm pinning it directly across the seam to be the front. Up here is where this one is going to attach, the front, which is the shorter side. And then the longer side is going to attach back here at the seam. So the inseam down here in the back. I'm calling it the back, but it's really just right here. This is the seam right here, and this is the outer. So the longer area goes right here, the shorter goes in the front. And now I'm gonna go ahead and on my serger, I'm gonna sew this on right sides together at the raw edges. So I'm gonna go all the way around the circle, and I'm gonna do that for both sleeves. Now, once I do that, because I'm gonna show you that, if you're doing the crop top version, this is where you would go ahead and hem your top. But I'm going to be doing my skirt. So if you are doing the hem, you can go ahead and skip to your hem and skip the part of the skirt. But let me sew this on, and then we'll put on our bottom ruffle of our skirt. All right, my ruffle sleeves are on. Now, if you wanted to, so this is knit, so you don't have to, but if you wanted to, you can go ahead and hem all the way around your sleeve. So you'll do 1/2 inch hem all the way around. But I'm not going to, I'm gonna leave it raw because it's a knit fabric, and I think it'll be fine. It's so cute. We're gonna go ahead and move on to prepping our ruffle to attach to our top if you're doing the ruffle version. I'm gonna open up my ruffle at the raw edges. I'm going to meet my front ruffle with my back ruffle at these raw edges. Right here. And I'm going to go ahead and sew those raw edges together, right sides together. Now, I'm going to go ahead and sew that, and then if you want to, after you sew this, if you want to hem it, then you can go ahead and hem it. Again, I'm going to leave it raw because it's knit, and I don't know that I want to do the extra work, but I might come back later if I try it on my knees and it's not, I want it to be finished, I don't like the raw look, then I'll come back and hem it. But for now, I'm going to leave it raw because I can. All right, so now my two sides are done. If you're leaving it raw, you'll have a tail here. So what I usually do is I fold that tail down right over my seam allowance, and I go in with a zigzag stitch on my sewing machine and just sew that zigzag right over that seam allowance, tacking that seam, tacking that what do you call it? Tail, serger tail down. Now that it's tacked down, You don't even see it. It got tacked down in a zigzag stitch. So that's how I tuck in my tails. Now, we're gonna grab our skirt. We're gonna meet them at the 2 side seams and go to the back and the front. And we're going to mark the back and the front. So it's like a quarter. So that way we know where we're gonna pin it to the top and where we're gonna sew. The short is the front, the short edge is the front, and the longer is the back. So we're gonna grab our bodice and do the same thing, match the side seams and go to the front and quarter and to the back and quarter. So now we know where we're gonna attach that skirt. I'm gonna grab my skirt and I'm gonna put my front shorter side right at those quarters in the front. Front, side, back, and other side. And then we're just gonna go ahead and sew. If you need to stretch your bodice just a tiny bit to match your skirt, you can do so. It won't be a whole lot. Mine is just a tiny bit, and you just kind of see how it's just a little bit. You just stretch it and make sure that it's all even as you're sewing it. So I'm gonna go ahead and sew that on, making sure I always like to start in the back, and we're gonna go sew it all the way around. Make sure you catch those 3 layers, nothing more, nothing less. All right. So our top is done. Our top is finished, and how cute is this? It is super, hyper, mega cute. So just this alone is super cute. But then we also have the skirt. So we have the option of making our skirt, and we're making a straight gathered skirt. So I'm gonna grab, first I'll go ahead and grab my liner. I know it is super wrinkled. So we're gonna grab our liner and we're gonna put it right sides together with our outer. Okay. And actually it's this way, yeah. And we're gonna pin those side seams together. We're gonna sew those side seams. Now remember that your liner is 2 inches shorter than your outer. Because your outer obviously is gonna hang lower than your liner. So we're gonna pin those side seams, ouchie, and we're going to sew those side seams together. And since this is a woven, you can do a straight stitch on it with a zigzag to finish the raw edges. I'm doing a serger. So then you're gonna grab your bottom edge and you're going to hem your bottom edge because of it being a woven. You can do a quarter inch up and then another quarter inch. If you're doing a knit, you can just do 1/2 inch. Or how I'm gonna do it is I'm going to finish that raw edge with a serge edge, and then I'm gonna fold it up and top stitch to hem. And you can do that with a zigzag stitch or a serger if you want to do that. So let me do that and I'll show you how that looks. So I went all the way around and top stitch with my serger. And now I am folding that serged edge in and giving it a hem. Now that that's been serged, I can go ahead and sew it on with a straight stitch on my sewing machine. I'm gonna make sure that it's on light, woven light, since it's a very light fabric, and we're gonna go all the way and sew that hem. So you can sew that hem in your preferred method. I just like this method because I find it kind of easy to do. I'm gonna go all the way around and sew that hem right there. How do I have a pin on my lap? I had a pin on my lap. Weird. All right, So now that my skirt is hemmed, this is my lining skirt. I'm gonna move on to grabbing my outer skirt. And I am using the tulle. So I'm going to open it up. It was cut on the fold, so I kind of pinned it on the fold because I didn't want it to come apart. All the layers of tulle. Here's a couple layers. Here's a couple more. You know, tulle is just so hard to cut sometimes. So you have to, you know, make sure that it's all even. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna grab at our top edge, we're gonna pin the top edge together so that way they don't move as you're trying to construct it. If you have clips, this would be a good time to use those clips, but I don't, so I'm just pinning those top layers together. You've got a lot of layers of tulle and you want to make sure that they're not going to move when you're trying to sew them together and work with them, and you know, while you're constructing. So I'm doing that to that layer, and I'm going to do the same to the other little bunch of tulle, the front and the back. Come on. All the layers of tulle, make sure they're separated correctly and they're still even. Oh, that one fell down. You can barely even see it, that little tulle. Tulle, you tulle. This is the top edge. I think they're together. If you have some really good techniques on tulle, like put away the other layer before you work on the layer you're working on so you don't get it all confused. Oh yeah, that's a good tip. And go ahead and make sure you pin it together. All the layers. I don't even know if I have all my layers here. Come on. This is the hardest part, making sure the tulle is together. So this is why you should probably go ahead and pin it right after you cut it, not put it aside and then come back to it later, because tulle is crazy. All right, so now we've got your front and your back together. I mean, you know, kind of put us together, sort of. So we're gonna place them right sides together. Is there a right and a wrong side to tulle? We're gonna pin the side seam. And we're gonna sew those sides together. One side and the other side. And we're gonna sew it like a half an inch or so in from the side to make sure you cut all the layers, and then we'll trim it. Oh, look at this one. It came up on me. We're gonna have to fix that. Fold it up. Okay. So let's go ahead and sew that. I'm doing a straight stitch on this one. And sewing that side seam, those two side seams together. All right, once your side seams are sewn, you're gonna go back and trim those side seams to the edge where we sewed it to give it a straight edge. Or don't cut the thread that you just sewed, but go like a little bit away from the thread. There it is. Now the side seams are cut. Now I'm going to go ahead and grab my liner and my, ooh, I got some mail. Let's see, I can't see what it is. Just getting it out. It's a big box. Ooh, I love mail. Yes. Okay, I'm gonna open it up. Okay, and I'm gonna fit my lining skirt so onto my liner, so right sides together. So you want your liner, sorry, I gotta turn this one around. You want your liner and your outer to be both right sides out. Okay, so now my lining, my outer is right side out and my liner is right side out. So I'm gonna fit my liner into my outer, and we're going to pin them the wrong side of your outer to the right side of your liner, because it's just a like it's just an overlay. And then we're gonna pin those raw edges. You can use those same pins that you had on your tool to pin it to your overlay. Pin your tool to your overlay. And since you use the same pattern piece for outer and liner, they should just match up perfectly. There's our one area. Now we're going to the back and doing the same. Pinning it together. Then we're gonna go ahead and top stitch them together at the raw edge. We're gonna do a 1/2 inch allowance, so that way we'll get a little bit of space to do our gathering stitch and move on. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and baste this together, or sew it together. The liner and the outer together. All right. So once those two are together, I'm gonna go from the top where I sewed them together. I'm going to do a basting stitch, a long basting stitch to gather my skirts together. So if I don't know how you want to gather, but how I usually gather is I put a long basting stitch all the way around, and that then I'll put that basting stitch together and it help me gather the skirt. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go all the way around in between the 1 inch allowance I just made and do a big basting stitch and go all the way around, and so I can baste my skirt. Gather my skirt. I'm gonna gather the width of my elastic. So let me go ahead and get that elastic prepped. That way we can gather the width of the elastic. Here's my elastic. I'm gonna fold it right sides together, and I'm going to sew stitch. I'll do a small zigzag stitch back and forth. Okay. So now that that's together, I'm gonna open it up and push those seams, push those down and sew them together so they're flat, so they don't bother anyone. There was one. And there's the other. And now they're nice and even and flat and laid out. So now I'm going to put it right here, and that's how wide I'm going to gather my skirt. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and do that long basting stitch all the way around. And I like to hold my tension a little bit, and it helps it gather. So it's just where my thread goes, and I'll just hold it and it helps it gather a little bit. All right. So now I've cut and I've got the gathering stitch right here. I'm gonna pull it and gather my skirt. Okay. And I'm gathering it the width of the elastic. So I'm gonna go both sides. I'm gonna go from this side, and then I'm gonna gather some from this side as well, so they're even. Okay, almost there. So it's pretty much gathered the width of the elastic. So I want to make sure that it's nice and even. And I like to do overlap those two gathers. And then when after I gather, I like to go ahead and tie them together so it doesn't come apart once I'm trying to sew it on. So I just kind of tie those together, and then I'll rip them out later once I'm ready to pull out the stitches. See, so now it's gathered the width. Now what you want to do is usually even them out, and then you want to sew that raw edge either with a zigzag stitch or with a serger. That way it'll be a nice even edge and it's not so super itchy right here. So I'm gonna go with my serger and I'm gonna sew that raw edge to make it be together all the way around. Don't pull on those gathers. You still want it to stay gathered. All right, so now that it's been, as you can see, now that raw edge has been kind of stitched, I'm gonna put this band right over where it is serged, because we're basically gonna top stitch the band to the skirt. So we're just gonna put it right over. If you wanted to quarter that band, that might help, and quarter your skirt, that might help as well. And it actually will help it if it is a little bit not gather as, because I didn't gather it as tight as I should have. Let's go ahead and quarter it. That way we know what we're doing. Okay, so we grab from the front, from the seam to the front, and mark it. Then from the pin, the pin and the back, we'll go to the sides and mark those sides. Those are my quarters. One side, another side. And then I'll do the same for the skirt, from my side seams to the front, and then from my side seams to the back. Then now you can go ahead and match up the pins where they go. So make sure you got your front and your back. This is my back. And we're gonna match up the back to the back. The side seam, where's my side seam? To the side seam notch. And remember, it's not, I'm pinning it pretty much like halfway up the elastic. And then my last side seam right here. And I want to make sure that they're all nicely evened out and together, and I'm pinning it to the band and other places, just so it's pinned on to the band. There's one section. I'm going to go ahead and continue to pin on all the sections all the way around. So now that my skirt is all pinned on, I'm going to go in with that fairly narrow zigzag stitch and top stitch it all the way around that, top stitch that skirt to my skirt to my elastic. So I'm going all the way around, top stitching those two together. All right. So now that it has been top stitched, our skirt is done. How cute is this little skirt? Okay, so we got our skirt and we've got our top. We got the cutest little outfit. How cute is this? So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I hope you love this pattern as much as I do. Can't wait to see your makes. Please come follow us on Instagram and Facebook so you can see everything that we're making and we can see what you're making. Please let me know if you have any questions about anything that I did for this tutorial. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you all next time.